Thwada chin ton bo ban tao trong tep gok. Dong bo lai nan vat. Twen loi john qui trin truong hok qui tin thok. Dong ko qua Evelyn va nip ket tuk. The first lie Adrian Blackwood ever told for me was that he was my husband, and the worst part was how quickly the room believed him. 10 minutes earlier, I had been sitting alone beneath the cold fluorescent lights of Hawthorne Academy's conference room, trying not to let 6 wealthy strangers see my hands shake. The room smelled like polished oak, expensive coffee, and judgment. Rain tapped against the tall windows behind me, soft but persistent, as though the weather itself wanted to be let inside. On the table sat a cream-colored envelope with the school crest pressed into one corner. Inside was a notice placing my 8-year-old nephew, Noah Bennett, on temporary in-school suspension while Hawthorne conducted a formal behavior review. I had raised Noah since my sister Emily died 3 years earlier. I was also his legal guardian, a fact clearly stated in the file Principal Margaret Holloway kept beneath her folded hands. Her pearl bracelet clicked softly against the table. "Ms. Bennett, Noah pushed another student during lunch," she said. "We cannot ignore physical behavior of any kind." "He pushed him after that student tore up his drawing and mocked his mother," I replied. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. A man at the far end of the table shifted in his leather chair. Charles Whitmore, board member, real estate developer, father of the boy Noah had pushed. My son described it as an unprovoked incident. Of course he did. Boys with private drivers and last names carved into hospital wings rarely had to explain themselves. "There are cameras in the cafeteria," I said. Principal Holloway looked down at the folder. The camera covering that section failed to save the recording. Failed to save. Not missing. Not deleted. Failed to save. The kind of phrase people used when the truth became inconvenient. I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. I wore a navy dress I had bought for Emily's funeral. My shoes had been resoled twice. Everyone else looked polished enough to belong in a magazine. Their watches gleamed beneath the lights. Their coats probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Hawthorne had admitted Noah with full financial aid because he was gifted in mathematics and art. I had believed talent would be enough to protect him there. Sitting in that room, I realized talent only opened the door. Money still decided who was allowed to remain inside. Principal Holloway pushed the envelope closer to me. "Noah's financial aid is not being terminated today. However, repeated disciplinary concerns can affect a student's placement. This is his first incident." "It is the first documented incident," Charles said. Heat rose behind my ribs. "Your son has been targeting him for weeks. Noah reported it twice." Principal Holloway's expression tightened. "We found no evidence of sustained harassment. You also claim the camera failed." Charles gave a quiet sigh, the kind meant to sound sympathetic. A child who has experienced the loss of both parents can struggle with emotional regulation. "Noah has not lost both parents," I said. "He has lost his mother. His father was never listed on his birth certificate. He has also had the same home, the same guardian, and the same bedtime for 3 years. Children need stable family structures," Charles replied. I turned toward him. A child can have 2 parents and still fail to learn kindness. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Principal Holloway straightened the papers in front of her. "Hostility will not help Noah's review." Noah's review. As though the child had become a case number because the wrong family had complained. There was an empty chair to my right. Hawthorne had told me I could bring a support person, an attorney, or another member of Noah's household. I had brought no one. I had a folder containing Noah's report cards, notes from his teacher, a letter from his counselor, and copies of the 2 emails in which I had reported the bullying. Apparently, none of those carried as much weight as a wealthy father's discomfort. "The Student Support Committee will meet again in 3 weeks, Principal Holloway said. Until then, Noah will follow a behavior plan and attend classes. Under supervision. We encourage you to participate in the upcoming family engagement events, so the committee can better understand his support system. You already have proof of his support system. We are trying to help." "No," I said quietly. "You are trying to protect a donor without admitting that you are protecting a donor." Charles leaned forward. "You should be careful, Ms. Bennett." I looked directly at him. So should your son. The conference room door opened behind me. No knock. No apology. Just the measured sound of footsteps crossing the hardwood floor. Every person at the table straightened. Principal Holloway rose so quickly that her chair rolled backward. Mr. Blackwood. I knew the name before I turned. Everyone in New York knew it. Blackwood Holdings owned hotels, shipping companies, office towers, and enough property to make half the city feel like tenants. The Blackwood Foundation was also Hawthorne Academy's largest institutional donor. Adrian Blackwood was the family's sole surviving heir. Newspapers called him private. Business magazines called him ruthless. Emily had once called him dangerous, though she had refused to explain why. I had seen him twice before. Once at a Hawthorne fundraiser, standing beneath a chandelier while powerful men waited for him to speak. Once inside a black sedan parked across from my apartment, watching the building as though he recognized something inside it. Now he stood in the doorway wearing a charcoal overcoat darkened by rain. Water clung to his black hair. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes moved across the room with quiet precision, taking in the envelope, my clenched hands, and the empty chair beside me. We were not expecting you, Principal Holloway said. Clearly, he replied. His voice was low and controlled, the kind of voice that never needed to compete for attention. Charles stood and offered his hand. Adrian, this is a private student matter. Adrian looked at the offered hand but did not take it. Then why could I hear you discussing the child's family from the hallway? Charles slowly lowered his arm. Adrian had been scheduled to meet the head of school about renewing the Foundation's arts grant. He had no reason to enter my conference room, at least none that I understood. He walked toward the table. No one asked him to leave. No one reminded him about confidentiality. The room simply adjusted around him. That was power, I realized. Not shouting. Not threatening. Power was entering a room and watching the rules become flexible. He stopped beside the empty chair. His gaze settled on me. Claire Bennett. It was not a question. My pulse stumbled. How do you know my name? He did not answer. Instead, he looked at Principal Holloway. What happened? She began explaining, her tone suddenly careful. Noah had pushed another student. The camera recording had failed. The committee had concerns about emotional stability and home support. Adrian listened without interrupting. His expression did not change until Charles repeated his opinion about children from incomplete families. Something cold passed through Adrian's eyes. You are blaming a child's household because your son's account has not been challenged. Charles lifted his chin. We are discussing contributing factors. Adrian pulled out the chair beside me and sat down. The small sound of wood against the floor seemed louder than the rain. Then allow me to contribute. I stared at him. He removed his gloves one finger at a time and placed them on the table. Principal Holloway looked confused. Mr. Blackwood, what exactly is your connection to Ms. Bennett? Adrian rested one hand on the back of my chair. He did not touch me, but every person in the room understood the gesture. Protection. Association. A warning wrapped in perfect manners. I apologize for arriving late, he said. I am Claire's husband. The room changed instantly. Principal Holloway looked at me with new caution. Charles looked at Adrian with calculation. The suspension notice remained on the table, but suddenly no one seemed eager to push it toward me. I should have corrected him. I should have stood and told them Adrian Blackwood was lying. Instead, I sat frozen beneath the weight of his name and the impossible relief of no longer being alone. Adrian turned toward me. You should have called. I found my voice. Barely. I do not have your number. Something almost like a smile touched his mouth. You will. He did not claim to be Noah's legal guardian. He did not sign a document or request access to Noah's file. He simply asked why the original complaints had not been investigated, why the camera failure had not been reported to the security contractor, and why Charles Whitmore had been allowed to participate in a review involving his own son. Within 20 minutes, the in-school suspension had been shortened to 1 day, an independent faculty member had been added to the review, and the missing recording had become an urgent technical problem. Adrian walked beside me into the hallway, while school officials scattered behind us. The moment the conference room door closed, I stepped away from him. What was that? A temporary solution. You told them you were my husband. They were not listening while you stood alone. That did not give you the right to rewrite my life. His gaze held mine. No. It gave them a reason to stop erasing your voice long enough to hear it. Before I could answer, a classroom door opened at the end of the hall. Noah stood there holding his backpack against his chest. His dark hair fell over his forehead, and his eyes moved from me to Adrian. The color drained from his face. He took one slow step forward. "Aunt Claire," he whispered. "Why is that man here?" I reached for him, but Noah kept staring at Adrian. His fingers tightened around the strap of his backpack. "I have seen him before." Adrian went completely still. "Where?" Noah swallowed. "In the picture Mom hid inside her blue book." Adrian looked at Noah as though the hallway had narrowed until only the two of them remained. Somewhere downstairs a bell rang and children moved between classrooms, their voices rising through the stairwell in a distant wave. Neither of them moved. "What blue book?" I asked. Noah glanced at me, suddenly uncertain. "The one from the box under your bed." My stomach dropped. After Emily died, I had packed her belongings into 3 cardboard boxes and pushed them beneath my bed because opening them felt like opening a door I had barely managed to close. I had never shown Noah those boxes. "You went through her things?" I asked. His shoulders folded inward. I was looking for pictures of her. The shame in his voice softened me immediately. I crouched in front of him and touched his arm. "You are not in trouble. Tell me what you saw." Noah looked over my shoulder at Adrian. Mom was standing outside a big stone house. He was beside her. Adrian finally breathed. It was quiet, almost invisible, but I saw his controlled expression crack for half a second. "Was anyone else in the photograph?" he asked. Noah nodded. "Another man who looked like you, but he was smiling." Adrian lowered his gaze. "Daniel." He said the name like it belonged to a prayer he had stopped believing in. I stood. "Who is Daniel?" Adrian did not answer. Principal Holloway appeared at the end of the hallway with Noah's teacher. "Ms. Bennett, Noah may return to class while we complete today's review." 20 minutes earlier, they had been preparing to isolate him for the rest of the week. Now they spoke as though his place had never been questioned. I hated how easily the world changed when a powerful man stood beside me. I hated even more how grateful I felt. Noah's teacher held out her hand. "Come with me, Noah." He hesitated. "Is he really your husband?" Heat climbed into my face. Before Adrian could speak, I answered. "No. Mr. Blackwood said something untrue because he thought it would help us. We are going to discuss it later." Adrian looked at me, but he did not contradict me. Noah considered this with the serious expression he used during math problems. "He should still come to family reading night on Thursday. You said I could invite a support person." The words landed more heavily than they should have. I had attended every school event with Noah. I had applauded twice as loudly, carried twice as many snacks, and smiled whenever he looked toward the empty space beside me. I had convinced myself that one person could fill every chair. Noah had never complained. That did not mean he had never noticed. "Go back to class," I said gently. "We will talk tonight." He followed his teacher but turned once before disappearing through the doorway. Adrian watched him leave. His face had returned to stillness, but his right hand was closed tightly at his side. "You are going to explain everything," I said. "Not where Holloway can hear us. You do not get to choose where this conversation happens." His eyes shifted to the conference room door, where Principal Holloway was pretending not to listen. "You are right." The answer surprised me. Adrian reached into his coat and removed a plain white business card. There was only a name and phone number printed on it. No title. No company logo. "Call me when you are ready to discuss the photograph." I took the card without meaning to. "Why were you in a picture with Emily?" "Because she knew my brother." "Why were you outside my apartment?" That stopped him. For the first time he looked almost ashamed. 2 months ago, Daniel's former attorney contacted me. He had found a sealed envelope containing Emily's old address. "I went there because I thought she might still be alive. I saw you and Noah leave the building. I had no proof of who you were, and no right to approach a child based on a suspicion. So you watched us? For less than a minute. Then I left. That is not reassuring. It was not meant to be. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying not to think about him. I failed. At the public library, I shelved books in the wrong sections and entered the same return twice. At 4:30, I picked Noah up from school. He climbed into my old Honda with the silence of a child waiting for the right moment. He lasted 3 blocks. Are you angry with me? No. Are you angry with him? I have not decided. He made Mr. Whitmore stop smiling. I glanced at Noah in the rearview mirror. That is not always a good reason to trust someone. He sat in the empty chair. I looked back at the road. There it was again. That chair. When we reached our apartment in Queens, Noah went to his room while I pulled the boxes from beneath my bed. Dust coated the tops. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. Emily's sweater still carried the faintest trace of lavender detergent. Beneath them were old receipts, college notebooks, and photographs from years I had never understood. The blue book was in the second box, a worn copy of The Secret Garden. Inside the front cover, Emily had written, "Some doors only open when someone is brave enough to knock." The photograph waited between the pages. Noah had described it perfectly. Emily stood outside a stone house beside 2 young men. One was Adrian, colder even then, his posture straight and guarded. The other had Adrian's eyes but an easier smile. His arm rested around Emily's shoulders. On the back, in her handwriting, were 3 names and 1 word. Daniel, Adrian, Emily. Home. A knock sounded at my apartment door. 3 slow taps. Noah appeared in the hallway clutching his scratched red toy car. Is that him? I moved toward the door, every instinct warning me not to open it. Then Adrian's voice came through the wood. Claire, Hawthorne has scheduled the final conduct review for 3 weeks from today. They also placed Noah on a family engagement plan. You may bring any support person you choose to the school events. I opened the door but kept the security chain fastened. Adrian stood alone beneath the dim hallway light, holding no umbrella and wearing no expression I could read. The school does not require a husband, I said. No. Then your lie ends now. It ends inside this apartment. Publicly correcting it tomorrow may allow Holloway to claim that we manipulated the review. We did manipulate the review. I forced them to follow their own policy. There is a difference. His gaze dropped to the photograph in my hand. I am asking for 3 weeks. I attend as the support person you chose. I do not sign anything. I do not access Noah's records. During that time, we learn why Emily was connected to Daniel. And after the review, I step away unless you ask me not to. Noah moved into view behind me. Adrian looked at him, then back at me. No more lies to him. I studied his face. That is my first rule. Then we agree on one thing. I removed the chain and opened the door. You have 5 minutes. Adrian entered without comment. He seemed too large for our narrow living room, too precise for the second-hand couch and the stack of library books beside the radiator. He removed his wet coat and folded it over one arm rather than placing it on a chair. Noah sat on the rug and pushed the toy car toward him. Adrian crouched, not gracefully or comfortably, as though lowering himself to a child's level was a skill no one had taught him. He turned the car over. 2 letters had been carved into the metal beneath the rear axle. D and B. His thumb moved over them once. Daniel Blackwood, he said. He carved his initials into everything he owned. Mom said it was mine, Noah replied. Then he must have wanted you to have it. I heard the certainty in Adrian's voice and the question beneath it. He still did not know why Emily had Daniel's car. Neither did I. Tell me what happened between them, I said. Adrian placed the toy carefully on the rug. Daniel met Emily through a community arts program funded by the Blackwood Foundation. The program operated in Brooklyn, but its records were later transferred to Hawthorne's old art wing when the outreach center closed. Daniel was 24. Emily was 23. My family did not approve of their relationship. Because she was not wealthy? Because she could not be controlled. Something cold entered his tone. Daniel wanted to leave the family business. Emily gave him a reason to believe he could. And you? I told him leaving was impossible. His answer came too quickly to be rehearsed. Guilt had a sound. I heard it then. Low and flat. Did Emily know when Daniel died? She disappeared before the funeral. Why? That is what I intend to discover. Noah looked between us. Are you going to pretend to be Aunt Claire's husband at school? I closed my eyes. Adrian answered before I could. I said something wrong because I wanted the adults in that room to listen. Your aunt has agreed to let me attend as a family friend. I am not her husband. Could you become one? Noah asked. Noah, I said. Adrian almost smiled. That decision would belong entirely to your aunt. Noah pushed the car in a slow circle around Adrian's shoe. You can come Thursday. I folded my arms. We have not finished discussing the rules. Adrian rose. Of course there are rules. You do not enter this apartment without permission. You do not make decisions for Noah. You do not give him expensive gifts. You do not use money to make him like you. You do not threaten anyone at the school. You do not ask for private records without my written consent. Adrian raised one eyebrow. What qualifies as a threat? Anything that makes grown men apologize before you finish a sentence. That removes most of my vocabulary. I should not have smiled. I did anyway, and the brief warmth frightened me more than his power ever had. One more rule, I said. You do not disappear without explaining it to Noah. The humor left his face. Why that one? Because people have already disappeared from his life. He does not need another. Adrian looked toward Noah. When he answered, his voice was quieter. Agreed. Thursday arrived beneath a clear October sky. Hawthorne's library glowed with paper lanterns and strings of warm white lights. Parents filled the room carrying coffee cups, picture books, and the easy confidence of people who had never wondered whether they belonged. I waited near the entrance with Noah. 6:30 passed. Then 6:40. Noah stopped watching the door at 6:45. He is not coming, he said. I hated the disappointment in his voice because I recognized it. I had spent years learning not to expect anyone. I had failed to teach him the same lesson. We do not need him, I said. Noah nodded, but his hand tightened around the book he had chosen. Principal Holloway approached with Charles Whitmore beside her. Her eyes moved toward the empty space at my side. Will Mr. Blackwood be joining you? Before I could answer, the library doors opened. Adrian stepped inside without an assistant, a driver, or a dark overcoat announcing his importance. He wore a simple navy sweater beneath his jacket and carried a paper bag from the bookstore 3 blocks away. Noah's entire face changed. Adrian crossed the room, knelt beside him and held out the bag. This is not an expensive gift, he said. It is evidence that I was delayed. Noah opened it and pulled out a copy of The Secret Garden. Inside the cover, Adrian had written a single sentence. Some doors only open when someone is brave enough to knock. I stared at the words from Emily's old book. Adrian looked up at me. Daniel's retired attorney had another copy. Emily wrote the same sentence inside it. That is why I was late. Noah reached for his hand as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Adrian froze. Then his fingers closed carefully around Noah's. The reading program began. When it was our turn, Noah carried the book to the front. Adrian should read, he announced. Several parents looked up. Charles Whitmore looked irritated. Adrian looked trapped. I was not informed, he said. You knew it was reading night, Noah replied. A few people laughed softly. Adrian glanced at me. I lifted one shoulder. You fund the library. Surely you can read. He gave me a look that would have silenced a boardroom, then sat beside Noah and opened the book. His voice was low and steady. At first he sounded like a man delivering a report. Then Noah leaned against his arm. Something in Adrian changed. The pauses softened. The words warmed. The room stopped watching the heir to Blackwood Holdings and began listening to a man reading to a child. Afterward, Noah stood in front of the reading circle holding a page he had written at school. My story is called The Man Who Sat in the Empty Chair, he said. I felt Adrian become still beside me. Noah read slowly. He wrote that an empty chair was not always empty because someone was gone. Sometimes it was empty because the right person had not learned how to arrive. He wrote that Adrian was not his father, But he had been the first man to sit down when the other adults tried to make Noah feel small. When Noah finished, Adrian closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he stood and walked toward the windows before anyone could study his face. I followed his gaze and saw a woman beyond the glass. She stood beneath a courtyard lamp in a cream coat, perfectly still. I had never met Evelyn Blackwood, but I recognized the family name in the sharp line of her face and the authority in her posture. She looked at Noah the way people look at a secret they thought had been buried. Adrian crossed the library and stepped into the courtyard. Evelyn did not wait for him. She turned and disappeared into the darkness. When he returned, his face had closed again. Who was she? I whispered. My aunt. Why was she here? Hawthorne notified the Blackwood Foundation that I had joined tonight's program. Evelyn oversees the foundation's legacy grants. Why was she watching Noah? Adrian looked toward the children gathering their books. I do not know. It was the first lie he told me that sounded afraid. We returned to my apartment shortly after 8. Adrian followed in his own car and arrived carrying dinner from a small Italian restaurant near the school. This may violate the rule about expensive gifts, I said. It is pasta. It came in a bag thick enough to survive a hurricane. I can put it back in the car. Noah took the bag from him. Aunt Claire burned dinner yesterday. The oven runs hot, I said. Adrian removed his coat. Of course. We ate at my narrow kitchen table beneath the yellow light that always flickered when the radiator turned on. Adrian loosened his tie. Noah talked about a science project involving seeds and 3 kinds of soil. I watched Adrian listen. Not pretend. Listen. He asked questions. He remembered details. When Noah spilled water, Adrian reached for a towel instead of waiting for someone else to clean it. The ordinary nature of the moment unsettled me. Power was easy to recognize in a conference room. It was harder to defend against when it was drawing a kitchen table. After dinner, Noah brought out a sheet of drawing paper and 3 crayons. He drew our apartment as a crooked square with smoke curling from a chimney, even though our building did not have one. Then he drew himself beneath the roof. He drew me beside him. Adrian stood outside near the edge of the page. Why am I in the rain? Adrian asked. You have not decided if you live here, Noah replied. He said it casually, but the room became quiet. Adrian studied the small figure. That seems fair. My phone rang before I could respond. The screen showed the library's main number. My supervisor told me that Blackwood Foundation Council had asked whether the library still held records from the old Brooklyn Arts program. They had not requested Emily's private employment file, but they had asked whether the archived program roster was public. I looked across the table. Adrian was watching me. You started investigating without telling me. I told you I wanted answers. You did not tell me your lawyers would contact my workplace. They asked about a public archive. They did not request Emily's personnel records. You still should have warned me. You are right. The immediate admission did not calm me. It only reminded me how easily he could make a boundary sound negotiable after crossing it. Noah lowered his crayon. I forced my voice down. Adrian noticed. We can discuss this in the living room. I followed him, leaving the kitchen door open so Noah would not think we were hiding anger from him. Adrian took a folded document from inside his jacket. Daniel created a private trust 9 years ago. It was intended for a future child, but the beneficiary was not named. Why would he create it before a child was born? Because he believed the Blackwood family would try to control anything he left behind. A cold feeling moved through me. You think Noah is Daniel's son? I think it is possible. Emily would have told me. Would she? His question hurt because I did not know. My sister had hidden photographs, books, and an entire life from me. Adrian placed the document on the coffee table. Daniel's former attorney can arrange a voluntary cheek swab test through an independent laboratory. Nothing happens unless you consent in writing. You choose the laboratory, and the results go to you first. You have already planned every detail. I have planned how to prevent my family from controlling the process. He is not a claim. He is not a line in a trust. He is a child. I know. Do you? Because your entire world is built around ownership. Adrian's expression hardened. My family does not own him. Then tell me what this changes. He looked toward the kitchen. It could explain why Emily ran. It could give Noah legal rights Daniel wanted him to have. It could also place him in the center of a fight he never asked for. That answer frightened me because it sounded honest. Noah appeared in the doorway holding his drawing. He had added a roof above Adrian's figure, but a heavy black line divided him from the rest of us. I fixed it, he said. Adrian took the page. His eyes stayed on the line. My phone rang again. This time the number was unfamiliar. A woman spoke before I could say hello. Her voice was calm, polished, and unmistakably cold. Ms. Bennett, my name is Adrian Blackwood. Before Adrian turns your nephew into a weapon against this family, you should ask him what happened the night Daniel died. Adrian heard Evelyn's voice, and the change in him was immediate. His shoulders went still. The warmth he had carried at my kitchen table disappeared. End the call, he said. I turned away from him. What happened the night Daniel died? Evelyn gave a soft breath on the other end. So he never told you. Tell me now. Daniel planned to leave New York with your sister. Adrian stopped him. I looked at Adrian. He did not deny it. The radiator clicked behind us. Noah stood in the kitchen doorway with his drawing pressed to his chest, watching every face. Go finish getting ready for bed, I said gently. But I want to know about Mom. Not tonight. He hesitated, then walked down the hall. His bedroom door closed with a quiet sound that felt far too final. Evelyn continued. Daniel went to the family house that night to collect documents and ask Adrian for help. Adrian refused. Daniel left alone in the rain. He died in a highway accident before he reached Emily. My hand tightened around the phone. What are you saying? I am saying Adrian knew his brother was desperate, and he still chose the Blackwood family over him. Adrian crossed the room and held out his hand. Give me the phone. No, his jaw tightened. Evelyn is using Daniel's death to control the story. Then tell me your version. Silence. That was all I needed. Evelyn spoke again. Adrian does not protect people. He protects the Blackwood name. If Noah is Daniel's son, Adrian will keep him close enough to control the shares placed in that trust. That is enough, Adrian said. His voice was quiet, but the room seemed to shrink around it. You are frightening her because you are afraid of what an independent trustee will discover. Evelyn did not answer him. She spoke to me. Ask him why he visited your building before he ever introduced himself. Then the call ended. I lowered the phone slowly. Adrian stood 5 feet away, yet he felt like a stranger at the end of a very long corridor. You said Daniel's attorney gave you Emily's address. He did. What else did the envelope contain? A reference to a sealed archive box from the Brooklyn Arts program. The records were transferred to Hawthorne years ago. Daniel's attorney believed Emily might have left something there. You knew there could be evidence at the school. I learned that this afternoon. Why did you not tell me immediately? Because I wanted to confirm that the archive still existed before I gave you another possibility that might lead nowhere. You decided what information I could handle. I thought I was protecting you from uncertainty. That is still control. His face tightened. Yes. The answer came without defense. I walked to the coffee table and picked up the trust summary. What happened that night? Adrian looked toward the rain-darkened window. Daniel came to the Blackwood house with a suitcase. He said he was leaving with Emily. My father had frozen his access to several family accounts after Daniel refused to return his voting shares. He asked you for help. Yes. Did you help him? Adrian's face gave me the answer before his voice did. No, the word was almost soundless. I told him he was being reckless. I believed he would calm down and return the next morning. But he did not. No. And Emily disappeared. Yes. He looked at me, and I saw something I had not expected. Not coldness. Shame. I spent 9 years telling myself that Daniel chose to leave alone. Then his attorney found Emily's address. I came to your building and saw Noah. He had Daniel's eyes. I left because I was afraid that Hope would make me reckless too. You should have told me at Hawthorne. I should have told you many things. But you did not. No, I thought of Evelyn watching Noah through the library window. I thought of the failed cafeteria camera, and the way powerful people erased inconvenient truths while calling it procedure. You need to leave, I said. Claire. Not tonight. Evelyn contacted you because she wants distance between us. She did not create the distance. You did. His eyes held mine. I never intended to take Noah from you. You should have trusted me enough to say everything before Evelyn had the chance to shape it. I opened the apartment door. Adrian picked up his coat, but he did not put it on. The fall service breakfast is Saturday, he said. Do not come. Hawthorne expects your chosen support person, not your husband. You can choose someone else. Then I will. The words hurt him. I knew because he became completely still. Adrian Blackwood could hide anger. He could hide fear. Pain made him quiet. I promised Noah that I would not disappear, he said. Then explain to him why you are leaving. Noah was standing in the hallway. I had not heard his bedroom door open. Adrian crouched in front of him. I kept important information from your aunt, he said. She needs space from me. I will not come into your home until she invites me again. Noah looked down at the drawing in his hands. Are you still coming Saturday? Adrian glanced at me. I shook my head once. He looked back at Noah. Not unless your aunt changes her mind. Noah's mouth trembled, but he nodded. Adrian walked into the hallway. For 1 second I thought he might turn around. He did not. Saturday morning arrived bright and cold. Hawthorne's dining hall smelled like pancakes, coffee, and cinnamon. Families sat at long tables decorated with paper leaves. The chair beside Noah remained empty. He did not look at the entrance. That was how I knew he was waiting. Principal Holloway began speaking about community and trust. The irony almost made me laugh. Then Evelyn Blackwood entered carrying a leather folder. She sat across from us without invitation. Claire, she said. I can guarantee that Noah's financial aid remains secure through 8th grade. I tightened my hand around my coffee cup. The school told me his aid was not part of the conduct review. Officially, it is not. Decisions can still become complicated. She placed the folder on the table. It contained a settlement agreement prepared by Blackwood Family Council. The agreement offered tuition support, housing assistance, and a private education fund. In return, I would acknowledge that Noah had no claim to management rights connected to Daniel's shares, agree not to challenge the Blackwood Legacy Trust, and keep the family connection confidential. You want me to sign away rights that may belong to a child. I want to keep him away from a conflict he cannot understand. Then why does your trust need control of his shares? Evelyn's expression did not change. Because a child cannot manage a company. Neither can a document that was changed after Daniel died. The words came from behind me. Adrian stood near the entrance, rain on his coat and exhaustion beneath his eyes. He crossed the dining hall without hurrying. Conversation softened as he passed, not because he asked for silence, but because people had learned to give it to him. He stopped beside our table and looked at the agreement. Do not sign that. Evelyn leaned back. You were not invited. Neither were your attorneys. Adrian placed another folder on the table. Daniel's original trust was located yesterday in the records of an independent law firm. It names his future child as beneficiary and a licensed trust company as fiduciary. It gives no Blackwood relative control over the child, the guardian, or the trust assets. Evelyn's smile disappeared. That document was replaced. The replacement was filed 6 weeks after Daniel died. The notary listed on it had retired the year before. Principal Holloway moved closer, suddenly interested in a conversation she would have avoided if no powerful names were involved. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. You are making a serious accusation in a school dining hall. Then we agree that this is not the proper place to pressure Claire into signing away a minor's potential rights. Adrian turned toward me. My attorney has sent the original trust to independent probate counsel. If you consent to testing, you will have your own lawyer selected by you and paid through a neutral legal assistance fund. The results will go to you before anyone in my family sees them. What do you receive? I asked. Nothing. He opened the folder to a signed declaration. I have formally declined any position as successor trustee, voting proxy, or family representative connected to Daniel's trust. If Noah is Daniel's son, I will have no legal authority over his assets. Evelyn stood. You cannot surrender family control based on sentiment. Adrian faced her. Watch me. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. Daniel tried to leave because he understood something I refused to see. A family name is not worth preserving when people must disappear inside it. Your father built everything you have. Noah is not another thing for us to have. He looked at me again. You remain his sole legal guardian. An independent fiduciary will administer any trust assets. No one changes either fact without a court order and evidence that does not exist. I searched his expression for strategy. There was none. Only the terrible openness of someone who had finally placed the truth where it could hurt him. Why did you come? I asked. Because the security contractor called me this morning. After Monday's meeting, I asked the school to preserve all available backups before the system overwrote them. Adrian turned toward Principal Holloway. The cafeteria video existed on the vendor's off-site server. The dining hall went silent. Charles Whitmore stood near the coffee station, his face turning pale. The recording shows Noah walking away twice, Adrian continued. It shows Charles's son following him and tearing the drawing from his hands. It also shows a staff member removing the damaged drawing before the incident report was completed. Principal Holloway opened her mouth, but no words came out. The contractor has sent the recording directly to Hawthorne's independent board counsel, Adrian said. No one in my office has edited or withheld it. I looked at Noah. He was staring at Adrian with cautious hope. Evelyn closed her folder. You came here to embarrass a school and dismantle your own family. I came here to correct several lies. A staff member approached Principal Holloway and whispered into her ear. Holloway's eyes widened. Noah Bennett is not in the supervised activity room. My chair struck the floor behind me as I stood. He was beside me a minute ago. The paper leaf he had been decorating remained on the table. Adrian scanned the exits. Then his gaze dropped to Evelyn's open folder. A yellow archive slip lay partly exposed beneath the settlement agreement. Across the top were the words Hawthorne Foundation Arts Records. Storage Room B. Adrian looked at Evelyn. Why do you have an archive request? For the first time she appeared uncertain. Her assistant moved toward the door. Adrian did not block him. The school will preserve every record connected to that request, he said. Principal Holloway called security and asked staff to search the building. I was already moving toward the hallway. The old art wing, Adrian said. I turned. Why? Noah heard us talk about Emily's archive. He also saw that storage slip. We found him on the second floor outside the closed art wing. He was sitting on the floor with Daniel's red toy car in his lap. A locked glass door separated him from rows of covered tables and metal filing cabinets. He was not injured or frightened. He looked embarrassed. I wanted to find Mom's box before someone took it, he said. I dropped to my knees and pulled him into my arms. You cannot leave without telling an adult. I am sorry. Adrian crouched several feet away, leaving space between us. You scared us, he said. Noah looked at him. Are you leaving too? The question stopped all of us. Adrian lowered himself until they were eye level. I gave up any legal control connected to the trust. Does that mean you gave up me? Pain moved across Adrian's face. No. It means no document can force you or your aunt to keep me. Noah considered that. What if I want you to stay? Adrian looked at me before answering. This time he did not decide for us. That is something your aunt must choose. The school's records manager arrived with 2 board attorneys. After photographing the lock and documenting the chain of custody, they opened the art wing. The archived boxes from the Brooklyn Outreach Program filled 3 cabinets along the back wall. Noah noticed the label before any of us did. D. Blackwood. The same initials carved beneath his toy car. Inside the box were volunteer rosters, photographs, copies of grant reports, and a sealed envelope addressed to Emily Bennett. The envelope had been placed there by Daniel's attorney after the outreach center closed. It could not be removed until the independent lawyers documented it. Evelyn watched from the doorway as the power she had trusted moved out of her hands and into a process she could not control. The letter inside did not magically settle every legal question. It did something more important. It told the truth. Daniel wrote that Emily was expecting a child. He wrote that he had created a trust for that child and chosen an independent company to manage it, because he did not want the Blackwood family deciding what kind of life his son or daughter should have. He asked Emily to leave New York if she felt unsafe. He also left one final message for Adrian. Do not protect my child the way you tried to protect me. Do not build a cage and call it shelter. Let the child choose a life. Adrian read that line twice. Then he folded the letter with hands that were no longer steady. The following Monday, Hawthorne placed Principal Holloway on administrative leave while independent counsel reviewed the missing video and the handling of Noah's complaints. Charles Whitmore was removed from every committee connected to student conduct. Noah's record was corrected. His financial aid was formally separated from disciplinary decisions, and the school assigned an outside student advocate to the remaining review. Evelyn did not lose an empire overnight. Real consequences rarely arrived that neatly. Over the next several weeks, however, the Blackwood board opened a forensic review of the altered trust document and her use of foundation funds. She resigned as chair of the legacy committee before the review concluded. Adrian did not purchase the school. He did not demand anyone's loyalty. He turned over the evidence to independent attorneys and stepped away. Claire Bennett, the woman no one had listened to on Monday morning, became the only person whose written consent could move Noah's case forward. I chose the laboratory. I chose the attorney. I sat beside Noah while a nurse gently swabbed the inside of his cheek. Adrian waited outside because I had not invited him into the room. He did not object. 3 weeks later, we returned to the same conference room. The fluorescent lights were still cold. The oak table still smelled like polish. But the empty chair no longer felt like an accusation. The independent committee dismissed the disciplinary case after reviewing the cafeteria recording. Noah's teacher apologized for failing to recognize the pattern of bullying. The head of Hawthorne's board confirmed that Noah's financial aid would continue under the school's normal academic standards, not as a favor from any donor. Then my attorney handed me the laboratory report. The probability that Daniel Blackwood was Noah's biological father exceeded 99%. Noah read the first page even though most of the words meant nothing to him. Does this change my name? He asked. Only if you want it to, I said. Does it change where I live? No. Does it make Adrian my uncle? Adrian sat across from us, his hands resting quietly on the table. Biologically, yes, he said. Noah thought about that. You are not very good at being an uncle. A small smile touched Adrian's mouth. I have had very little practice. When the meeting ended, Adrian remained seated. He placed the plain white business card he had given me 3 weeks earlier on the table. The corners were worn from being carried in my purse. The first time I sat in this room, I claimed a place I had not earned, he said. My heart beat against my ribs. Noah stopped drawing. Adrian looked at me, not with command but with a question. I do not want control of your home, your choices, or Noah's future. I only want the chance to keep showing up. I looked at the man who had once ruled every room by making people afraid to oppose him. Then I looked at the child who had taught him to sit quietly in an empty chair and wait to be invited. No promises you cannot keep, I said. Adrian nodded. Only the ones I prove. Noah pushed his drawing. Across the table, 3 figures stood beneath one roof. The heavy black line was gone. I placed my hand over Adrian's business card. Then start with dinner tonight. Adrian smiled. Not the careful expression he used in boardrooms. A real smile. Small, uncertain, and entirely human. He did not move into our apartment the next week. He did not buy us a larger home or place guards outside my door. He came to dinner on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He attended Noah's parent conference as his uncle and sat in the same ordinary plastic chair as everyone else. He learned that Noah hated peas, loved astronomy, and needed the hallway light left on after a bad dream. He learned to ask before helping. He learned that silence could mean comfort instead of punishment. I learned that apologies sounded different when they were followed by changed behavior. 7 months later, Adrian asked me to marry him in our kitchen after Noah had gone to bed. There were no reporters, no board members, and no frightened school officials waiting for an answer. The ring was simple. The question was quieter than the lie that had started everything. I said yes because by then he had already proven that he knew how to stay. Nearly a year after our first meeting at Hawthorne, Noah called him Dad for the first time. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning while Adrian stood in our kitchen burning pancakes and insisting that the smoke alarm was part of the recipe. The word slipped out before Noah could become embarrassed by it. Adrian froze with the spatula in his hand. He did not demand that Noah repeat it. He did not turn the moment into a ceremony. He simply lowered the heat beneath the pan and said, "I am here." That was the title he had truly earned. Adrian Blackwood had inherited an empire built on fear, but the only name he ever fought to deserve was the one a child gave him freely.